Hi BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and today I'm going to be doing a tag. I'm going to do the Reading Diversely tag. This was originally created by Holly at Library at the End of the World, and I was just really interested. I haven't been tagged by anyone, but I really wanted to do this, mainly because it caused me to look into my own reading and to look back at the books that I've read and the books that I want to read and to discover how diversely have I been reading. So the main aim of this tag is just to raise awareness and discuss books that are diverse. What I'm going to do is for each continent I'm going to give you, in my case you're meant to give one, but I've got quite a few, so I'm going to give you a few books that I have read and tell you a bit about them and why I liked them. And then I'm going to tell you about a few of the books from that continent that I have on my own TBR and a little bit about them and why I'm looking forward to reading them. So let's get into the tag. I'm going to start with Asia. So I'm going to tell you 3 books that I've read and 3 books that I want to read from this continent. The first book I want to talk about is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I read this quite a long time ago now, and I still remember really enjoying it, and I really enjoyed the film that came out a few years ago as well. The story is about Amal. He is the son of a wealthy merchant in Kabul. Hassan is his servant, but he is also his friend and playmate and someone that he has always known. This book follows Amir and Hassan and their journey into adulthood. During times of religious, political and ethnic conflict, Amir abandons his friend Hassan, and this story is a coming of age story. It's a story of friendship and how these two boys bond and how Amir in later life approaches reconciliation with his friend. It's a really good book and I remember it being quite moving, and I would definitely recommend this to someone who hasn't read any of Khaled Hosseini's books. The next book I want to talk about is A Thousand Splendid Suns, also by Khaled Hosseini. I remember reading The Kite Runner and then feeling that I had to read more. He was such an interesting writer. It was such an easy book to get into. The writing was very engaging and it was a really enjoyable read, but also quite poignant and with some really important messages. The story is about these women living in a time and a place where women are seen as second-class citizens and brutality is the norm. I don't know if it's because this was a female story with female protagonists, but I really found this story quite poignant and moving, and I definitely preferred this to The Kite Runner, although only marginally. I thought they were both really brilliant stories. But I think because you can place yourself in the situations of these women and consider what would it have been like had I been born into this time, into this place, into this culture, would this be what would happen to me? And so therefore I feel I connected with it more. He's written brilliantly from a female perspective, and I'd really recommend that you pick up this book as well. Third Asian book that I want to recommend is a slightly different one, and that is Battle Royale by Koshan Takami. I really loved this book. I read it a number of years ago now, and I also read the manga books as well, and I just think this story is really good. It's a high octane adventure. It's very similar to the Hunger Games in some ways, but I wouldn't say that necessarily if you like the Hunger Games you would like this. It's very violent and there is very descriptive and very sexually explicit parts. I would say definitely don't go into this if you're a younger reader. It's very mature content. It's very, very bloody and gory. It's about a group of students every year that get sent to a remote deserted island, and they are basically in a fight to the death. It's a really good book, but as I say, make sure that you are comfortable with lots of blood, guts and gore. Okay, so now on to the Asian books that I am hoping to read at some point soon. Ghost Bride by Yangtze Chu. I don't know an awful lot about this. I know it's set in Malaya and it's about Li Lan, who is from a poor family and doesn't have many prospects, and she is approached, or her family is approached by a wealthy family who want her to become a ghost bride for their recently deceased son. I love these type of books that combine Chinese history and traditions, because I think it's quite insightful into these cultures. I also want to read Khaled Hosseini's And the Mountains Echoed. I'm sorry I'm having to show you these on my phone, but they're all on my Kindle and it doesn't seem to be loading up properly. But I love Khaled Hosseini's writing. I've had this on my Kindle for a while and I think it's about time I get to it. I believe this particular book is surrounding a family and it's also based in Kabul, so I'd be interested to dive into that. And my final pick is Brick Lane by Monica Ali. This book, Monica Ali is a British born with Bangladeshi origins writer, and she writes a story of two Bangladeshi sisters, and it is about them living in the East End and it's about their lives and cultural differences, and I'm really interested to read this. I've had this for years and years on my Kindle, and it's about time that I read this. The next continent is Africa. For Africa, I've got one pick that I have read, and I've got two picks, but both by the same author, for books that I want to read. My pick for books that I've read is Half of the Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This story is set in 1960s Nigeria and follows a young boy who is a house servant for a university professor. It follows this boy's life through working with the professor and what that entails, and the conversations that the professor has with his friends, and generally life in those times. Now, the two books that I want to read are both by Nnedi Okorafor. I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but they are Who Fears Death and Akata Witch. I've heard about these quite a lot recently. I know that a couple of people that I watch on BookTube have read these and said that they are really good, so I have got them on my TBR. For North America, again, I've got one pick of a book I've read and two that are on my TBR, one of which I'm reading next month. The pick of the book that I have read is The Colour Purple by Alice Walker. I remember reading this at school and really enjoying it. Possibly one of the first books that I really enjoyed reading for school as well as for pleasure. This book mainly takes place in rural Georgia. It's set in the 1930s and is about women of colour within this time period and this area. I really enjoyed this book. I remember it being quite an emotional read, and it definitely an easy read and engaging story, so I definitely recommend that to people. And then the two books that I'm hoping to read, one I'm going to be reading this month is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I believe this is a novel about two families spanning a number of generations, and I've heard really good things, so I'm interested to read this. And then the second book is Octavia Butler's Kindred. I was interested in reading some Octavia Butler. I've heard Nicole from Nicole's Adventures in SFF. She's read quite a few of those over the past few months and has done some brilliant reviews of them. And she's really piqued my interest, and I messaged her and asked her where she suggested that I start, and she said that Kindred is probably the best one to start with, as it's a standalone. So I'm going to try and get to that pretty soon. My picks for South America are actually from the same author for both ones that I have read and ones that I want to read. I love Isabel Allende. I think she's an amazing writer, and I've read quite a few of her books already. My favourite is a trilogy starting with City of Beasts. It's a young adult series from her, and it's about a 15-year-old boy who goes off to the Amazon, and I just really enjoyed this book, and I definitely recommend, if you haven't read any of her books, this is quite a different introduction into her reads. If you don't like this book and you have tried it, then I would definitely say don't be put off Isabel Allende's other books, because her adult novels are different in their themes, so I would definitely recommend trying another one. And the novel that I want to read is Isabella Allende's Island Beneath the Sea. This book follows a young girl who is sold into slavery, and it's about her journey, I believe, set in the 18th century, I think. Now moving on to Europe, the books that I wanted to recommend: Stieg Larsson's trilogy, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. I really enjoyed these books. There's quite a lot of politics within them, and possibly stuff that I wasn't familiar with, and so therefore as crime novels they were slightly slower reads for me, but they were definitely worth the effort. You really got a lot back from these, and I have to say, having watched both the American and the original films, the books are way better, and I just really enjoyed those. If you like crime, but intelligent crime books, and internet and hackers, and a really, really strong kick-ass female character, then I definitely recommend these. The two books that I want to read are The Midnight Palace by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, and also I'm hoping to read, I've just got it from the library, 1984 by George Orwell. That is a classic book that I really feel like I should get to soon. And lastly, but by no means least, Oceania. The books that I have read from Oceania that I'd like to recommend are The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. Brilliant book. I cried a lot, and I really found it quite a moving book. And the books that I would like to read are The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. I believe this book is about a baby that gets washed up on shore. A couple who can't have children find the baby, and it's about the choices they make and their decisions and how this affects their lives. I've had this for a while. This got sent to me from one of my monthly reading years, and I really need to get to it because it's been a while. And the other book that I really want to read is The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. This book won the Man Booker Prize in 2013 and is set in 1866, and it's about Walter Moody, who has come to make his fortune in the New Zealand gold fields, and it follows his life, his discovery of a mystery, and it's a big 800 pages, so although I have it, I have to say I have been putting it off because it's quite a big one, but I shall hopefully get to that soon too. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find any books from Antarctica, but I decided I'm going to give you one or two extra bonus books because I found a few more and I've decided that I want to include them too. So I talk about this book all the time, but I really recommend as a non-fiction pick I Am Malala. It's by Malala Yousafzai. This is a brilliant story and everyone should read it. And Tiger Hills by Sarita Mandana. This is a book about childhood and friendship and growing up and coming of age and love. I'll read you the back because I really think I'm going to enjoy this book and that you might too. 1878 Southern India. At the first girl born in the family for over 60 years, beautiful spirited Devi is adored by everyone, and when she befriends Devana, a gifted young boy whose mother died in tragic circumstances, the two swiftly become inseparable. Their futures seem inevitably linked until one night Devi meets the tiger killer and makes a decision that has heartbreaking consequences for generations to come. So that was my Reading Diversely tag. I hope you enjoyed hearing about some of the books, and let me know if you've read any of the books, either the books that I've read or the books that I'm looking to read. Let me know your thoughts, and I tag anybody that wants to do this. I just think it's really important to be highlighting some diverse books and getting people talking. So that's all from me. Bye for now, BookTube.